Hi, everybody. It's Amy Hauser with Made for More with Amy K. Hauser. And each week I've been recording a little something, different topics week to week. And I'm excited to have people that just want to tune in, send comments, and just connect. As you know, what we go through life and we have questions and we have areas where we are maybe just not fully connecting and understanding, especially in our relationship and our walk with Jesus. Like, where are we at? Why do we sometimes feel some disconnect from what we've heard or what we've grown up with, and maybe how that's actually unfolding in our lives? So I love being on here and doing these talks, but as I've mentioned in the past, I want to connect with other people too, and just see where people are on their journey or their walk and what they're experiencing in their life and how we can navigate this stuff together. So today I am joined with one of my favorite people, Zack Wilkins. Zack is actually married to my niece, Hannah, and I have known Zack for quite a few years. And he and I, when we get together, we have some great chats. And so as I'm getting out here and sharing conversation with people, Zack would be a great one to start off with, as we've talked about this in the past. So I just want to welcome Zack and thank him for being on here with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And so, as you guys, if you followed my videos up to this point, last week we talked about acceptance in the beloved based on Ephesians 1, 5, and 6. And just talking about that adoption and that inclusion, and remembering that in Christ, like, we are accepted in the beloved. And how do we move from that place from knowing that and reading it and going, oh, that's all great, to what does that really mean for me in my life? And how do I live from that place of knowing I'm accepted, even when sometimes I can enter a room and feel like I don't really feel very accepted, or start to feel uncomfortable in my place or position in the world around me. But how can I operate from that place of knowing I'm acceptable because of what Jesus did for me and for all of us, and allow that to actually change our lives? So that's going to be an ongoing journey, like, for all of us, and that conversation can keep going. But today, Zack and I are going to talk a little bit, I think, about self-acceptance. And so from being accepted by God, but then how does that impact how I see myself, my past experiences, my role in this world, and just, I don't know, just like self-acceptance. I don't know, Zack, when you think about self-acceptance, like, what comes to your mind for you?
When I think about self-acceptance, I don't really know. I think that I know a lot of people who really struggle with that. I struggle with that. I know sometimes, for sure. I think that we can draw it from ourselves, and I think that's where it has to start. But I do think that we draw it from other people as well. We're social beings, and so I think that when we connect with other people, when we connect with other people like us, then that really does garner more of a feeling of self-acceptance, because then you can see, like, oh, these people are just like me. Whereas if you're trying to fit in to a group that's, you don't feel connected to, or you have to put on a face that is not truly who you are, then that's not self-acceptance, and you're going to feel like an imposter. So
Yeah. Which is so funny you say that, because that is literally like a big part of what I do, is that place of where we deal with like a Christian imposter syndrome when we're in that environment sometimes. And that's, I think, a lot of times why people don't stay in it. They start to hit a point of going, I feel like I'm supposed to be something that I'm not, and I'm trying to be it, but it doesn't fit or it doesn't feel right. And so we tend to just shy away from that. So whether it's like in that kind of an environment, or like you said, just in social settings or certain groups we're around, and if we don't feel like we get to, or we're not able to be ourselves, what and whoever that is, then we feel like we're in that imposter syndrome place, or we put on those masks and we have to be something we're not. And then there's that disconnect that starts to happen. Like, is this how I have to exist? Or is this what I just am doing right now, but I want to avoid this as much as possible so I can be myself.
Yeah, because I think that we all have to do it, unfortunately. It's just the way that everything works, right? Like when we go to this function or that, we do have to act a certain way. And there's debate on whether, acting one way or another, is that really me? Is it really not me? But yeah, I think if we're constantly doing that, or we're constantly not being true to ourselves, then there is a huge disconnect. And I think it can be really tiring and lonely, as opposed to when you do get around people who do accept you for who you are. I think that can be really life-giving, as you
Mhm.
like to say, and your whole perspective changes.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think constitutes that acceptance? Like when people accept you for who you are, um, I mean, what's at play right there? What's that dynamic with those people, you know?
I think that with those that accept you for who you are, I think there's a huge amount of empathy.
Mhm.
Typically, yeah, I mean, a lot of empathy. And I think people are pretty good at telling when somebody is not acting not acting true to themselves. I think that it's pretty apparent, um, usually when somebody's putting on a face. I don't think empathetic people, I don't think people especially respond well to that. It's just like, be yourself, you know? And then I guess there are some people you can't be yourself around because either they are judgmental or they're not being themselves, or like sometimes there's this dynamic of like being like cliques, right? Like you want to be like in the group, like you want to be in the in group, and everybody in the clique talks about everybody outside of the clique. And that creates an us versus them mentality. But yeah, I think when people are accepting of you, they are able to see you, and I think that takes vulnerability. And on the person who is accepting it, I think it takes empathy.
Yeah. When I hear you saying that, Zach, it reminds me of a book I literally just finished this week on Audible called The Education of Little Tree. That was
Hmm.
actually recommended by my son, your friend. Um, and there's a long story behind it, and why we even listened to this, and a podcast that led up to this, choosing to listen to this book. But there's a segment in the book where the narrator, who is being Little Tree, and says that there's this definition of kin, and kin in the South. And so this is Education of Little Tree. He's a Cherokee Indian. And kin actually is not mean your blood relative, but kin means somebody who understands you and loves you because they understand you. And so the people that understand you are able to love you, and they know your story. They understand why you do the things you do, whether they're seem acceptable or appropriate or not necessarily, because they understand you, and then choose to love you anyway. So like we can be ourselves, like what I'm hearing you say. We can be ourselves and we can be around other people when we have that level of a true understanding and empathy
Hmm.
to allow someone to be themselves, show up as themselves, and still choose to be in their presence anyway, whether they fit the norms or they don't fit the norms, right? And then we think about like different ages or seasons of our life when fitting in is what's required, and being like we're all we're all red hots or like hot tamales in a box versus Mike and Ike or Good and Plenty that are all mixed up, or Skittles or something like that are different. We want first all the same. You know, that's where I'm going with that, I guess, is the hot tamales. They're all the red candies in the box. And we only want to be around red candies because they affirm what we are. Versus, you know, you move into the Skittles or the Mike and Ike's or whatever, where you got all the different colors and all the different things, and it works together. And you can have your show empathy more than versus conformity.
Yeah, I think that understanding is probably a better word, more specific than empathy. I think that's like really is the key. Even with people that you don't agree with or you don't like, if you understand them or like where they're coming from, I guess I'm just thinking, I mean, you could draw so many examples, but like politically, like nobody tries to understand anybody else who's not in agreement with them. And so I think that like, even if you disagree with somebody, like if you understand where they're coming from, I think that you can draw connections to yourself and say, oh, well, even though their thoughts are different or whatever is different than I think, their motives are the same, or I have felt that way, or we both just want to make the world that we live in a better place, or whatever it is. I think that that level of understanding, you draw it from yourself. So if somebody comes in the room and they're like, or maybe, so if somebody cuts you off in traffic, right? Or if you accidentally cut somebody off and they're mad and they're pissed off and they're honking or whatever, it's like, you can choose to be mad. Maybe you would be still, but if you have that like level of understanding, it's like, I've been there before,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like I've felt that way before. Like this guy probably just had a bad day.
right.
You know, it's like that level of understanding, I think, is key.
So I love that. Two things that you said that I think are worth talking about. One is the understanding, and are willing to like understand why they do the things they do or why people do, to listen to people first. And honestly, I feel like that is an area where the church has done a huge disservice. I feel like a lot of times, like people, was it Gandhi that said, I love your Jesus, I'm just not so sure about your Christians. Like in terms of Christianity, like I love everything about Jesus, but it's your people that I struggle with sometimes. And it's so easy to preach at people and tell people what they should be doing or who they should, you know, what people need to do, versus listening and empathizing and understanding why people do the things that they do or believe what they believe or experience the things that they do. Because until we understand that, and we maybe can't connect with it, but we hear it, and it helps us ask the next right question versus just telling people what they need to do and believe and think. And I'm not putting that just on church. Like that happens in families, it happens in relationships, it happens in the workplace. Gosh, if you just look at our political climate and things, right? If we could just listen to the other side of the table, maybe, and ask some really good questions first, we'd probably be able to meet back up a lot easier, right? But there's that, I think, that is huge. So I love that you said that. And I think across the board, we all have a lot of room to grow and getting better at that. I know I do. But even then, to, you know, any thoughts on that, but also what you said about the driving. Okay, so we're cut off in traffic. And, that if we can just kind of empathize with that, but that to me, Zach, takes such a level of, if I don't accept me, okay, if I'm in a place where I think I have self-acceptance, regardless of groups, but accept me for who I am. If I can look at myself in the mirror every morning and go, yeah, you're doing all right. You're doing better than you think you are. And you can love that reflection back, then I'm more apt to have empathy, say, for the stranger or for my spouse or for anyone, because if I have self-hatred, I don't like who I am. So I'm trying to get everything I need from outside of me. I am going to spew that onto anyone who might be a weak victim, whether it's the person who cut me off in traffic. They're going to hear my distaste for myself. And so is anybody who catches me off guard, whether it's my spouse, whether it's my coworker, whether it's my dog, because what's our internal state gets out of us and onto everything around us.
Well, you see it all the time with insecurities. It's like, I don't know, at least for me, sometimes it's so obvious when somebody is insecure because, and I know what they're insecure about. There's one of my favorite quotes is, it's by Dr. Phil. I say it all the time. It was his dad actually that said it. And he said, his dad was a psychologist and he was seeing this boy. And he was like a troubled kid. And Dr. Phil's dad said, there's just something about that boy I can't stand about myself.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of a confusing statement at first, but it's like, if you're insecure about something, you are more likely to point it out in other people. So it kind of goes back to what you're saying about, if you are not okay with yourself, if you don't like who you are, or like a certain part of you, or whatever, it is likely to come out if you're not at peace with that part of yourself.
Yeah. So do you feel like when we are not secure, we are more apt to look outside of ourselves to gain some stability, some sense of self-worth, or something to identify so we can be in self-acceptance?
Well, I think that's what's happening when we point our finger at someone and say, look at him, look at what he's doing, look at how bad he is, or whatever. I think that's what we're doing. It's like we are so scared that that's us, that we think that it's going to make us feel better or fix our insecurity by pointing it out in someone else. So yeah, I do think that we look outside to try and feel better about ourselves by putting other people down.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, so what, in your opinion, and I mean, it's clear by the video that there's an age gap here. You're married to my niece. And so I also like this from generationally speaking, like from your age to ours and how we approach these kinds of topics. But what do you think for you builds that place anyway of self-acceptance? Like, what really, whether you feel like you're there or you're growing or it's a constant evolution, but really that place of self-identity, self-worth that you can go in to a place, whether it's with people or workplace, relationship, and go, yeah, I'm confident in who I am as a person.
I think that it comes with age, mostly. I think that everybody can say that they're more confident now than they were in middle school, high school. It does come with age, but I don't think it ever stops.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can stop trying to accept yourself, but I don't think that the journey ever really does stop. Yeah, personally, I think that like mm, just like there's a lot of societal pressures, um, I think that stopped me from fully accepting myself. And I don't know. I don't know if I could tell you how I am working to manage that, but I know that I recognize it and I'm mindful of it, and I am actively searching for ways to resolve that part of myself.
To be fully feeling accepted, you mean? Or to,
Yeah,
yeah,
to be fully feeling uh of self-acceptance.
yeah. In your identity of who you are.
Mhm.
Like,
I think that I think that there's a lot of shame around non-acceptance of ourselves. And when we don't accept part of ourselves, we don't like to share that piece with other people. We don't like to tell other people, hey, I'm feeling really bad about myself because of this. And we don't like to focus on it because it's painful. And not doing either of those things, it doesn't help. It just lets it breed. Um,
yes,
and so I think that there's a lot of shame around the parts of ourselves that we don't accept.
yes. Now, there is I agree with you. And there is something, and that keeps us, to me, when we shine light into darkness, it disperses it. So like when you let that light in, so like let's say that means having a conversation with a few of your good buddies, you're sitting around having a beer and you're talking and you're like, you guys, there's this thing, or however it comes up. But if it does, and they're the type of people that speak life into you,
Mm.
it can just shift it so quickly. But it's like, why did we not talk about this? And there's like some kind of, um, whether it's the empathy, whether it's the understanding that starts to come, and you got to speak it out. And then they kind of shined the truth into it, brought the truth into it, and it can shift it. It can really put you on a trajectory of growth and understanding. It's not always there, but it's amazing how we don't do that very often, even though it usually is incredible when we do. And I think finding a few really trusted people that you can do that with. But it's the hard thing to me, and tell me if you agree, is when we need, for me, like if I need to do that, the vulnerability feels so raw, it keeps you shut, it keeps your mouth shut. And to me, that's like the enemy going, you're not going there because I know that there's life right around the corner if you open your mouth. And so it keeps us in that place of darkness and isolation. And that's why I think people, when we struggle with depressive episodes or different things that could really, with a little light shining in, could really shift us back to where we know and we exist in that place of truth and who we are and whose we are and what attributes in us are really worth that people value and want to be around. But we can't do it when we're hurting, and we stay in that place of isolation, and it just can spiral.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why it does start from within, or at least it starts with conscious action. But I do think that it is necessary to, like you said, shine a light on it, like bring other people in. And it can't just be anybody, because because our biggest fear, right, is to say our insecurity to somebody and then to have them spit it right back in our face and say, that's true. You are like that. You are a bad whatever. And that's why we don't want to say anything. And so you can't share it with just anybody, because the worst thing anybody's probably going to do is say, oh, no, you're fine. It's not a big deal, which is not good to hear either. But if you
It's
share
not
it with
really
people,
helpful.
no, and it's kind of invalidating. But if you share it with people who you trust and who have shown you in the past that they can carefully handle your you giving them your vulnerability or you showing it to them, that can be really powerful.
Right. And I'd like to say that we surround ourselves with people who can remind us of who we are when we forget. And, generationally, that is easier to do maybe sometimes the older we get and we've gone through certain experiences. Sometimes we don't feel like we have the luxury of always selecting, or whether it's coworkers or sometimes family, other things that we don't get to select who we're around. But then we do get those healthy boundaries around us that say there's only certain things I'm sharing in these particular places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is like, I think what you're saying is like you kind of need to figure out who you are first. And you can do that by yourself. But you can also do it through the interactions that you have with other people, because like you're saying, you share something with somebody and whatever that interaction is, it makes you feel bad. Like you're not going to share that part of you with that person anymore. And so it kind of works itself out in that way, and it takes time. But yeah, you do start to draw up boundaries, and you do start to figure out, okay, who am I? Who is life-giving? Who it just works itself out that way, I think.
Yes. So there are a lot of pressures in the world, a lot of things trying to vie for your attention, for your identity, who you are, how you define yourself, how you see yourself. And I mean, that can be overwhelming. I'm not in your generation. um, and I feel like there's some advantage to that. Yet I can't help but think about how many things are trying to define people today. This is who you are. This is what you need to be. This is what life looks like in order, like to be seen as successful or to experience a fullness of life, and you've got social media, we've got everything coming at us, telling us what makes, a good life or what makes a crappy life. So if we're inundated with all of that, how do you filter through that to know your essence of who you are?
Well, I think that older generations have more of an insight because I wasn't around, in times before mine. So, but I think from what it seems, it's like things are opening up, they're opening up and they're closing at the same time. It's like people are allowed to be more of who they are now. Absolutely. Um, with expressing themselves um, through whatever, through social media, through like tattoos, piercing, sexuality, um, gender. I mean, it's really opening up in that way. Um, but yeah, it does seem, at least from what I hear, it's like I actually just heard it on Netflix the other night. It was Barack Obama saying that I think it was in the 60s, the average house cost 2 times the annual average salary. Now it's like 6 times. And in the gap between the wealthy and the not wealthy is growing. And so I don't know. I guess I feel like it is opening up in terms of like what does success mean, but it's still there. It's like success, when you say, oh, he's a successful person, that means that he's made it career-wise. He has a lot of money, or she. Yeah, and so I guess I don't, like I said, I think that it is opening up in terms of allowing people to be who they are, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I feel like I mean, you're doing grad school, you're going for your psychology, for your counseling degree. And I mean, obviously there's a huge uptick in mental health struggles, need for mental health practitioners, care, and different things. And even though like that, I mean, everything you're saying, things that have opened up, like where people can express themselves or that people are more accepted in non-conformity, yet the human heart is still aching and longing for truth or for that place, like that's something, I don't know what it is. There's the hole in the human heart that's going, what do I fill it with? I can do drugs, I can do social media, I can buy stuff, I can change, this, that, everything about me. But there's this still an emptiness that, I mean, from the beginning of time, people are looking, we look outside of ourselves, we look within ourselves for that place of this is who I am and I'm okay with it. And I'm 55 years old and I'm still on that journey of, who am I and am I okay? Like, but I will say at this point in time, Zach, I feel more confident in who I am than I ever have before, but I don't think it's age. I think there's that factor, right? We were talking earlier about the gray hair before we were recording, like the wisdom, these things like, there are life experiences, but there's so often, like you've talked about, that shame that we still attach to certain parts of us, things from the past or things left undone or not picked up that we wish we would have, or whatever it is that still tries to say you're not enough, still tries to say you're missing the mark, or just do this and you'll have the approval, but it's just never going to do it. And for me, it has only come from this shift of realizing I don't have to do anything, but Christ did it all for me. And I was like, how did I miss that most of my life? I thought I had to do in order to be. And then I have been exposed to so many incredible people and groups and authors and interpretations of the Bible that have opened my eyes and my heart to go, oh no, this is who you are. Like last week, being accepted in the beloved, I'm accepted in Christ. I'm like hidden in him, but yet still individually like who I am. Like I'm still Amy and I have all these attributes. And you know what? I was about to say great attributes. I still had to catch myself, but they are great because they're given to me by the creator of the universe, who says, this is what you do. This is how you do it. And nobody does it like you. And you're still going to compare yourself to Zach and to Tom and to, Peter, Paul, and Mary, like whoever, whatever, all these people. But this is who I say you are. And when that starts to resonate, I think I know it in my heart of who I am, but it's hidden. The world has hidden it. It's gotten covered. It's like a diamond that has poo covered all over it. And then it starts to peel off and it goes, it's always been in there from the beginning of time. But the more you let me love you, the more you stop fighting me, your diamond starts to shine, and then it'll shine in the Amy ways. And you don't have to compare to the Zacks, the Hannahs, the Rosses, the Toms, the world around you. You just get to be Amy. And that will eventually just be exactly what you're supposed to be, whether that means I'm 5 years old or 55 or 85.
Mm.
And it's the most beautiful discovery. And it's not religious, and it's not a bunch of rules. It's just the truth. It's the hard facts that this is who you are. And I can either agree with it or I can ignore it. And the more I ignore it and try to take the world's definitions of who I am and need the people around me to tell me who I am, which I used to do all the time. Like I was only, it was like a gas tank that it would get filled and it would drain. It would get filled and it would drain. And it was in my head so much. But there has been this shift, like in the last 10 years, 7 years, 5 years, last few years, even more. And it's like crazy beautiful. And I want the world to have that because it's for everyone. Like in that scripture that I mentioned last week that I talked about in Ephesians 1, 5, and 6, it says, for it was always his perfect plan to adopt us, all of us, because Christ died once for all people, not just Christians, and his delightful children through our union with Jesus, the Anointed One, so that his tremendous love that cascades over us would glorify his grace, meaning his grace, it's like this free thing that he gives to everybody. For the same love that he has for the beloved one, Jesus, he has for us. And this unfolding plan brings him great pleasure. It's for his pleasure. He's like, I love it when my people know how much I love them. So whatever the world around you tries to tell you, you are, you're not, you have to do, whether they listen and accept you, whether they have empathy or not, you can rest in who you are, because it's like your perfect father has your back, like loves you, sees you, and will give you the confidence and that acceptance right where you're at, so that you can like overflow in due time, the more you realize it. And it's so cool. It's so cool. I get off my soapbox. But like that's the self-acceptance that comes from his acceptance of me that keeps growing. Doesn't mean I don't still want acceptance of the world around me, but it gives me a strength when I don't have it from them. It's given me the courage to do this thing. You know, I don't know.
That's awesome. I think that when you were asking, what is missing from the world, mental health problems are on the rise and what's going on. I think that maybe a big part of that is spirituality. I think all of humankind ever has been spiritual. And I think that idea of connecting with something bigger than ourselves is really important to help us ground ourselves and root us in something, because like we do like to think that, it's just us and it's our life and we're responsible for it. And like, I just think that because we're so conscious that it can be too much, and connecting to something, that's what I think spirituality is connecting to something bigger than ourselves, is really grounding, and it anchors us. I think spirituality can be in a church. I think spirituality can be at home. It can be reading the Bible. It can be going to work, if that's where what you love to do is. It's like, I think to me, spirituality and this idea is like connecting with something bigger than ourselves, whether it's an idea or a group of people, or even like for me, like when I see the mountains, that's deeply spiritual for me. And it makes me feel really small, and it does help me anchor.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's important. And these kind of conversations are awesome to just have and to keep having, and, realizing that there is this gift in us. And for me, that's Christ in us. That's what the scriptures say, that's what happened at the resurrection. Like, that's what happened. His indwelling presence came for all, not for people that just believe it. It's there in every person. He came and entered all of humanity, and then that awakens to its full potential as we come into agreement with that place. And so these are great conversations to have. We're right at, I think we're at an hour that we've been recording already. Our time flew by.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I know, right? So I'm not sure. I don't know if that's an hour that we've been on this Zoom call or recording, but I
I think
know
it's just the call.
it might just be the call. But it's been well over 30 minutes. But any last thoughts on that, or on anything else on self-acceptance before we wrap this up, Zach?
I guess I just had the question. So do you think that it's necessary to accept Christ to gain self-acceptance?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't think that. I think we can have self-acceptance. I think it's like, I think it's a fast track.
Hmm.
I think it's he does acceleration in our life as we partner with him. I think he's at work in all of our lives, whether we're aware of him at work or not, because he loves us no matter what. But he is so for relationship. Like, he wants that, like, I wish I could come up with a quick analogy of, it's like somebody working on your behalf, but you're not in partnership. They maybe help you get things done, get things going. But man, when you join them, things get going, and there's just new things are learned and shared, and there's an open communication, and there's something better that's happening there. So when we go, dude, I don't understand you fully by any stretch of the imagination, and he's like, good, because I'm God and you're not. And that smallness you talk about in the mountain, but it's like, but I want to know, I'm open to knowing more. I need you to show me, what do I, those kinds of things. We start, and then we open our awareness to it, and he's going to do it. It's not up to you. He doesn't need you to do anything. He wants the connection. He wants that growth. He longs for it. He wants to reveal himself, and he already is. Like, Zach, you radiate him, whether you know it or not. You radiate him in your love, in the way you are. You're letting him work through you and share through you and touch other people's lives, because it's who you are. He made you. And so you're a reflection of that. And it doesn't have to be church. It doesn't have to be that. It's your work. It's the way you're out in nature. It's the other things, like, you're fully alive doing the things that he created you to do. And we can expand on that and grow in that area. And the more we do, the more we see he's accepted us. We come into agreement with that. And that self-acceptance, it germinates and starts to blossom and grow and create a garden, but it's already there. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It did.
Yeah. But I use a lot of words. But yeah, I think it's like putting fuel on a fire when we go, yeah, I want that.
I hear people talk a lot about, like, well, there's like the old expression, right? It's like, what is it? Man plans and God laughs, something like that.
Oh yeah.
Right? It kind of
Yeah.
like what you're saying is like he's helping us, and we might want to go like this way or this way. But when we align, then we can really go.
Yeah.
Is what I'm thinking that you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it just gives us some more understanding of like when things don't go the way we hope, that we understand his nature is good and it is loving and it is pure and it's never to harm us. It's that he's there in the hard times that happen on this earth. And yeah, that's a whole nother conversation we can have on here, but I think we can accept ourselves. I think it's real, it's genuine, it's powerful, and it's life-giving to others when we realize the source and go, oh, I don't have to muster this up. It's not about me accepting myself. It's me realizing that I'm already accepted. Yeah.
Love it.
Love it. Enjoy this time with you. I always do enjoy chatting with you. We can get on some really great conversations, and maybe we can do it regularly on here. So
yeah, definitely.
So people, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. Leave some messages or comments or message me directly if you have some other thoughts, ideas, insights on self-acceptance and how that ties into us being accepted in the beloved. And don't forget to check out my Facebook page, Instagram, and then the website at www.amykHauser.com to learn more. And this is really what I do. We talk about mindset. If you go to my actual page, it's like, you know, if you long to believe there's permission to be who you were created to be, live free from self-condemnation, regardless of circumstance. Self-condemnation, opposite of self-acceptance, right? And put an end to shame, fear, and negative mindsets. So it takes other people to be pouring in and reminding us who we are. But when we first know who we really are, y'all, that can shift things. So just stay tuned and be encouraged. All right. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm going to stop the recording.